Chapter 3 is the effects of leadership, organizational climate, and organizational culture on managerial communication. Basically how these three have a big effect on communication. Basically, managers need to know three things. They all need to understand the dynamics of communication within the leadership context. They need to understand organizational climate in which they work, and very, very well. And they need to communicate within the organizational culture of the organization through the hidden hierarchies, the visible and invisible layers, the values, the beliefs, the norms, and the assumptions that happen as a company goes on. And as a company changes, maybe becomes global, these things all change. The learning objectives are explain managerial communication within the leadership context, using managerial communication within the organizational communication climate context, and the influence of managerial communication within the organizational culture. And we'll also differentiate between what is formal and informal communications. What has always amazed me about leadership is you can have bad leaders and you can have good leaders. And it doesn't really seem to matter if they are charismatic, if they have the power, they are the leader. And you can see this with Bernie Madoff as one example. People blindly followed him, even though what he was doing was incorrect. Leadership should be the process to provide forward movement for the organization, a vision for the future. It is very important that a leader be able to give a vision for the future. Basically, leaders should strive to achieve common goals for the good of all, for everyone within the organization, for all of the stakeholders. Leadership is a process, and basically you can't be a leader unless the others in the organization give you that power to be a leader. Basically, you just don't demand leadership, you have to actually earn the power for leadership. Referent leadership or referent power is based on a person's personality, and it can be used for good or bad. In 1978, a preacher who was very charismatic by the name of Jim Jones led a whole congregation to take tainted Kool-Aid and basically kill themselves. These were hundreds of people, but they followed him almost like he was a god. Expert power is based on competence, and you will see a lot of people in a firm become a leader because they are very good in marketing or engineering. They are an expert in their field. Legitimate power is based on your position or your status. Sometimes people have power because they've earned it through climbing the corporate ladder or paying the price of hard work and sacrifice. It's because of their position that they have power. Reward power is based on giving rewards to employees who work hard. Basically, when you get rewarded for doing something, it makes you want to come back and do more. And then coercive powers. These are basically people who use power to penalize or punish. And it's the least effective of the powers. Basically, most people do not like to be coerced into doing things. They like doing things because they like people, rather than because they're being forced to do them. And then leader-member exchange is the idea that subordinates are part of the in-group by working on didactic relationships, working in twos. Basically, you develop relationships with the people around you by working with them on individual levels. This is how we build trust, empathy, and basically it's how duties are assigned within a firm. A good leader is self-disciplined and will always be able to lead people. The organizational communication climate context of a firm includes the openness, the trust, the confidence, the participation in decision-making, and acceptance of a leader, of a manager. Basically, OCC includes the attitudes and how supervisors define their roles and the roles of subordinates within a firm. So basically, if a manager has a very open, laissez-faire type of leadership style, he's going to be much more inclusive of people than if he has a theory X type of style. It's comprised of many things. It has reciprocity, the openness and honesty within a relationship, so your subordinates feel very free to come to you, you feel very free to come to them. It has a lot of feedback. Remember that feedback loop in the communication model. It's very, very important when it comes to managers being successful. It's the degree to which a supervisor gives feedback to subordinates, the degree to which supervisors permit and encourage feedback. Basic to OCC is the communication openness, information adequacy, and communication supportiveness. Managers play a critical role in a firm. And basically, if they are not leaders, the firm is not going to do well. And this has been proven over and over again through leadership studies in management. Figure 3.1, a complete organizational communication climate model, shows how this open and supportive communication should work. Basically, you have the information openness and you have interaction supportiveness. Let's look at the information openness side first. Basically, you have two things that are required: that information is adequate, that it's honest, and also that the information flow is very complete. Managerial information sharing practices. There should be job performance information, personal information, work group information, strategic information, and information that goes upward. Basically, generally in a firm, we're in silos. And sometimes we have to get out of our silos in order to be more active in solving our organization's problems. The interaction supportiveness includes managerial interaction skills. And basically, listening is a big part of this, listening both actively and emphatically, clarifying meaning, using that feedback loop, checking for accuracy, disclose your emotions, make sure others feel free to disclose their emotions. You need to manage the conflicts that go on in an organization. People are not always going to get along, and you need to give clear instructions and encourage input. And notice how many times feedback is in here. You need to give constructive feedback, you need to solicit feedback, and you need to provide feedback. So feedback is probably one of the most important things to making sure things are done correctly within a firm. Facilitating communication. There's many things a manager can do as a leader to facilitate. One of the things is organization charts. One of the things organization charts do is put us in silos, unfortunately. And what this means is that the flow of communication between functional areas sometimes doesn't happen as well as it should. It's limited in its scope. So organization charts can impede communication. It can help communication. It helps communication because a person knows who they should go to. But it impedes communication because sometimes they don't go outside of those boxes when they need to. You can also use training classes. And training classes are very effective in helping people learn how to communicate, who to communicate with. You can have all kinds of training classes when it comes to communication. It can be written communication, how to use email, how to use texting, because people coming out of college tend to do this much differently than people who have been in the workforce for a long time. Cross-functional speaking. Basically, this is the problem because people know how to communicate with people within their own function. They understand the words they're using. They understand the words of their discipline. But when they go to another function, they may not understand the words that are used in that function, such as engineering and marketing, or marketing and finance. They're not always talking the same language. So this cross-functional speak is particularly, can be problematic. And it's one of the things you can actually use training classes for, is to help people from one group understand people in another group. Communicate to manage attitude. Basically, when you're managing people, you have to manage them at their level. So you've got to communicate at whatever level that person is at, not your level, not the level of other people in the organization. Virtual supervision has become a new type of management, and it has lots of problems because you're virtually supervising someone that you never see. Basically, your only communication with them is virtual. It's on the telephone, it's email, it is virtual entirely. Sometimes this is because they're in another part of the country or another part of the world. Another problem that comes up because of this is different cultures and different languages. And we've spoken about this, and we'll speak about it throughout this book, about how dealing as a global corporation changes you, because you have to learn how to deal with these different cultural backgrounds. They're each individual, and it's important that they are. Just as organizational climate is how people see the firm that they work in, the organizational culture is actually what the firm is made up of. It is the artifacts, the values, the assumptions. Basically, organizational culture is the overriding circle that people deal with when they're communicating. And this culture can change, but just as a culture on the outside of a country will change very slowly, also an organization culture will tend to change very slowly. A good example of this was when Daimler-Benz bought Chrysler. They had a lot of problems because they had very different cultures that they worked in. One was very German, one was very American. One was very by the book, 1, 2, 3, and the other one was very laissez-faire. And of course, when these two cultures clashed, they had a lot of difficulty working together. So this is one of the things you want to realize about culture, is it can cause lots of problems. And when you're putting firms together, buying something, you want to make sure that you have the ability inside your organization to actually assimilate and make these two groups be able to work together. So basically, if you look at a culture, what is it? It's values, it's assumptions, and there's layers to it. You have the top layer, you have the bottom layer, and everything in between. You have the administrative assistants, you have the sales force. And all of these are layers within this cultural context, and they make it what it is. It's how information flows, it's how the organization chart is built, it's the cross-functional communication that goes on, it's the climate. So culture includes climate. Communication is shaped, it's sent, it's received, it's interpreted through the cultural structure. It's how free you feel to do things. It's what you know you can do and what you know you can't do. And basically, culture starts at the top. The person at the top really shapes the culture. A good example of this is I have a doctor I've gone to for a long time, and my husband and I have both gone to him. And one of the things that has always amazed us with this doctor is that his office personnel are always very upbeat, will do anything to help you. They just exude happiness. This doctor does also. He is always happy. He is a no-nonsense doctor. I mean, he gives you a spade for a spade. But he just has this very positive attitude that filters all the way down through his staff. And it's just amazing to see. It's wonderful. There are competing definitions of culture, and I'd like to go through some of these. Basically, Shane says culture is a pattern of shared basic assumptions that the group learned as it solved its problems of external adaptation and internal integration, that has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. It's one of the things when you interview that you need to interview for, is can you work in this culture? Is there anything in this culture that would keep you from performing your best? Deal and Kennedy have another definition. It's an integrated pattern of human behavior that includes thought, speech, action, artifacts, and depends on man's capacity, or woman's, for learning and transmitting knowledge to succeeding generations. Deal and Kennedy's is more of a country cultural definition than a business. Sheen's definition is more of a corporate definition. Another definition of corporate culture is an environment or personality of the organization with all of its multifaceted dimensions. And that's going to take in some of the things we saw in the other two definitions that we looked at. Basically, it takes time. You have to learn the culture of an organization before you can be successful in it. Next, we're going to look at the layers of corporate culture. There's the artifacts. These are all of the things that you can see, hear, or you feel as you go through an organization. It's the building that they're in. It's the way people dress. It's the values they espouse. It's the basic underlying assumptions that make up that culture. There is an outer layer, a middle layer, and a core layer. Basically, the outer layer are the products that are visible, such as food, language, shrines, what they produce, these kinds of things. The middle layer is the sense of the group's right and wrong. What are their ethics? What are their values? And then the core are the assumptions that exist, which are very implicit to the members of the culture. When people organize themselves to solve problems, how do they get this done? What is the shared meaning between people? And then what are the realized patterns? Shared values and beliefs. The management style and philosophy. What is actually said, done, and rewarded? Are they a theory X, Y, or Z? The management systems and procedures. What is actually in place? And what are the written and unwritten norms and procedures? Things that you learn by observation. Nothing is written down. So the only way to learn these things is to listen and very carefully pick out what is happening. So as you shape a corporate culture, what are some of the things you're going to have to think about? One is that meeting precedes decision making. So people have to understand the meaning of what you're saying. They have to understand what it is you're expecting of them before they can actually make a decision and do something. It has to be understood. Then they can decide. They have to understand the culture. They have to make decentralized decision making. And particularly if you're in the virtual world, this becomes very, very important. And there are people who are storytellers. And these people actually help a culture hold together because they will tell the new people the stories that have gone in the past. Basically, the history of the culture. And changing the culture in order to change its message is not easy. And we have many examples in the book of GM because they're a very clear one where it's been very difficult to change the culture and change the message that they have been trying to do for years. Culture is a driver. Basically, culture is what makes the firm continue. There are many dangers of embedded cultural norms, and we call these the hidden hierarchy. If you look at figure 3.2, it kind of shows how all of these kind of work in an organization. Basically, there are things that aren't written anywhere, but they're there. They're within the organization. And that hidden hierarchy you must be dialed into as a manager because it's kind of hidden and you want to make sure there's no one out there who's working against you. Basically, spies are people who are very loyal to the network, and they're going to keep you informed. They are the people that seem to be able to find out everything that's going on. We talked about storytellers. They're the people who basically interpret what is going on in the organization, the history of the firm, and they bring it forward. The priests tend to be the warriors. They like to guard all the company values. Basically, we've always done it this way. Why do we need to change? Or this person isn't following orders like they're supposed to. They're dressing differently. These are what the priests will do. Whisperers. These are the ones that are kind of the power behind the throne. They are the source of the boss's power because they help give the manager his power, his leadership, and helps others follow along. So your whisperers are very important to you. The cabals. These plot a common purpose by joining together. It's like unions. So your cabals are going to be your unions as one group, or your administrative assistants, or your professors, or your managers, or your engineering department, your marketing department. These are the groups that you have to learn to work with and join them together for strength. And then the gossips are the ones that know all the trivial information that goes on in the firm. And these people are also very helpful to you as a manager. So all these hidden hierarchies in a firm, you need to basically be plugged into, and you need to have some enthusiasm and know the types of communications that are taking place within them. Basically, in the 1990s, corporate communication departments were typically run by professionals with degrees in journalism. And many times they weren't connected to any of these hidden hierarchies, so they weren't very good. If you're going to have a very good communication person, basically they have got to be able to be connected to all these hidden hierarchies. Otherwise, they're not really going to know what is going on or how to change anything. Formal and informal communication. Formal communication basically follows the organizational chart. Basically, if you have a very formal company, you never go outside of your box. You always go to your boss, who then goes to his boss or her boss, all the way up to the CEO. And the same way coming back down the chain. Everything follows an order, a chain of command. Very common rules, regulations. You'll find a lot of procedure books, a lot of plan books, a lot of schedules. You will find everything written. Written channels are used very strongly because you don't want to lose any of the information. You want to document everything. You'll use upward, downward, and horizontal communication only as you are allowed to. And basically the upward communication is to keep management informed. Downward communication is generally used to instruct, build and maintain morale and goodwill of the workers. And horizontal is used to promote relationships between departments. And generally this is done from an equal position to an equal position. So you would have one department manager talking to another department manager. And then it's a social structure of shared meaning. Everyone is very comfortable with it. It's a very closed system, but people who want lots of structure prefer this very formal way of getting business done. Informal communication is just the opposite. You communicate with everyone. It has to start at the top of the organization. They have to buy into this, that nothing's going to be lost without everything going through them, although eventually they will hear and know of everything. It's very circular in nature in that everyone can talk with everyone else. You know, while you keep your boss informed, at least if you're smart, you'll keep your boss informed. There's no pressure to have to tell your boss every little thing. You can do something and inform your boss afterwards what you have done. Organizations like Microsoft are a very good example of the very informal. GM is a very good example of the very formal. The grapevine becomes a very important part of informal communication because it's kind of like, the communication is kind of like a spider's web in that you have people just talking to everyone. One of the things that is important in this kind of an organization is that everyone is plugged in somewhere, because you can't assume you're going to know everything if you're not. There's going to be lots of twittering, lots of jamming, texting, emailing, and other technologies used. IBM is one of the companies that set up a jamming system, because they have gone from a very formal organization to a much more informal organization over the years.